With every day that passes, we get that much closer to the release of Moons of Elsweyr, the next expansion for the Elder Scrolls Legends. But in the interim, the community has been revealing cards from the upcoming expansion. We've got some additional ones since the last time I had done a review video, and I wanted to talk about the ones that have been revealed because some of them are, I think, really interesting, and these are a little bit lower in terms of power level than some of the ones that were shown in the first video, but that should be very apparent because we have a pair of commons this time around and a pair of epics, so we don't have the flashy legendaries like when they first started with the reveals. And we're going to start with one of the commons. First up is Plung Smuggler. This is a 2-cost strength creature. It is a 3/2 body. It says pilfer, equip a steel dagger to a friendly creature. It looks okay at first glance. It's going to remind a lot of people of something like Inspiring Soldier because it's a 2-cost 3/2 that if it gets to attack gives you a +1 essentially, right? So Inspiring Soldier makes a 1/1 creature. Smuggler adds 1 attack to something, and that might feel lackluster at first glance. However, the fact that this is a strength creature, which also blows my mind because it's our first strength creature with Pilfer that we've been shown thus far. But the reason that this is important is because there is an awful lot of really good synergy with Battle Mage for this particular creature. I love this card in Battle Mage. I like an item Battle Mage where you're going to care about equips and where you want to stack daggers. You could run this in something like Covenant as well if you're trying to get an item on the 3-cost 5/4 that's shackled unless it has an item. This is a great way to enable that if it gets to attack and get the pilfer off. But the big thing for me is that you get to choose the target of the steel dagger. It's not random. So being able to curve this into something like Daggerfall Mage is huge. Daggerfall Mage has been a staple for a long time for a reason. It's a fantastic card, but one of the drawbacks is it does only attack for 2. And that means it doesn't trade up immediately well with other 3-drops, and it also means that it can be targeted by Execute and Sorcerer's Negation, but that's a different story. But Execute is also a problem, as is Grizzly Gourmet. So Plung Smuggler here is a aggressive card with a 3/2 body. I mean, even if you don't get the Pilfer, it still trades into and kills Barrowstalker, which is always nice. But it's an aggressive card that allows you to follow up your Daggerfall Mage by getting a dagger on it, which now means Daggerfall can trade into some of those 3 health creatures, things like Haunting Spirit, etc., etc. And it also takes it out of execute range. So I am a big fan of the Plung Smuggler in that regard. Now, that being said, does that mean that this goes in every Battle Mage deck under the sun? No, you're probably not running this as a Prophecy Battle Mage. You may or may not even run this in traditional mid Battle Mage, but I do think that there are some decks that will want to take advantage of this particular creature. I think that it's on the cusp of being really good, and we're going to have to wait and see what other cards get revealed, but it's not terrible, which is honestly a pretty good thing to say for a common card that has been revealed this early. It's not terrible, and I think it's going to be overlooked for a bit. Like when Satanin was first shown, I didn't even give that card a second glance, and now I'm all over Satanin. I can't speak highly about a card the way I do Satanin, so who knows, maybe this will surprise me. But, right now, it's fringe playable, which for a common is outstanding in my opinion. It's been a long time since we've seen a lot of commons come in and shake things up. Spoils of War certainly got it done in the last expansion, but is this one going to be it? Probably not, but this might still see play. There are some uses for it. Now that I've beat that horse to death, let's move on to the next one. The next card is Injected Altmer. So this is a 1-cost 1/1 lethal. And before I even go on to the rest, because I know some people who are lore freaks might be upset, it's already been confirmed that this is changing to a Bosmer, and it's not going to be a high elf, because we all know that Bosmer like to eat things, and that's kind of what this card does. So now let's talk about the rest of the ability. It is a 1/1 lethal for 1 in agility, and it says when Injected Altmer is consumed, give the consuming creature +1/+1 in lethal. So interesting card because we've seen, consume show up on a couple of other cards, but it was the act of consuming that buffed the other cards on their own text. This, by being consumed, provides a bonus, which is a little bit of a twist. So we will have to wait and see if there are other cards that are similarly designed to kind of boost the consume mechanic. It could be really, really fun. The obvious comparison is going to be to the endurance creature when you look at this, right? This is a 1/1 lethal for 1. There's an endurance creature, the 1/1 lethal for 1. This has some additional text, so theoretically you could like say power creep or whatever, but where this card might actually see play where the endurance one did not is in lethal based decks that are traditionally in agility. The fact that this card is agility and not an endurance card is actually a big deal, because if you did want to, even as a 1 or a 2 of, throw it into your lethal archer deck, maybe some other options as well. There's a chance this could end up seeing play. This is also in theory what they call a fighting 1-drop. Because it has lethal, it is a 1-drop that you can play and it will trade up. There's a reason that cards like Crown Quartermaster, for example, have been played for a long time. Crown Quartermaster gets played because it's an aggressively statted creature for a 1-drop, being a 2/1. It provides you the dagger, so even if it dies, you get some value. But also, if you have to equip the dagger, you can trade it into most 2-drops like a Barrow Stalker. So it becomes what they call a fighting 1-drop because it trades up, right? So if you do not have the Ring of Magicka, you lead off with a fighting 1-drop, and then if they play into the lane, you maintain initiative, or at least keep trying to fight for initiative by taking away the card that they just played. This gets that job done. It does not provide the other kinds of immediate value that Crown Quartermaster does in the form of the dagger you can save for later or use for burst. But if consume is widely used, then I expect this card to see an awful lot of play in agility. If consume is not widely used, I could see it sneaking into some, lethal ping based decks, maybe as a 1 or a 2 of, just because it's a nice cheap activator. But again, you're not going to expect a lot because this is a common, right? Like, this is a common 1-drop. The fact that I'm even considering playing this is already a pretty good sign, in my opinion. So next card, Blast Bones. This was revealed by Karakhan Jewel. This is a 5-cost strength creature. It is a 3/1 that has charge, so I already love it. And it has last gasp of deal 1 damage to all creatures in this lane. Now, it's okay at first glance. You're going to immediately try to compare it to Underworld Vigilante, for example. And it does 1 less damage if going face than Underworld Vigilante, and it does not reveal cards hiding in the shadow lane. It does not remove cover like Vigilante. But if you are using this to trade and not go face, this potentially trades much better because it's still going to trade at 4 because it's going to deal 3, and then when it dies, it deals 1 damage to all creatures in the lane. So while it does not remove the cover, it does still trade at a 4 damage level, but you also get that bonus like Skaven Pyromancer effect. Now, if you follow Sparky Pants on Twitter, they showed off the animation for this, and it looks glorious. That might be reason enough to play this card, but this card is going to rely heavily on other effects to carry it. So like released as is, without knowing anything else that's in the set, it's not looking very good for this card to end up seeing play, because there are just better cards at doing what it does. Things like Tiny Dragon and Skaven Pyromancer give you that 1 damage to the full lane, just at a much more Magicka efficient rate. Cards like Vigilante give you trading ability, but also are better at going face if you need to close something out, and better with utility with removing cover, because sometimes you're not even trading with the Vigilante, like you just play Vigilante to remove cover, and then other creatures will trade for you. So this needs some help. Now, where it could get help would be in ways to give this lethal. And then when it dies, you wipe a full lane, right? So like in a Doomcrag style deck maybe. This could also get some value in warrior decks that like to inflict pain upon their own creatures, because this deals 1 damage to all creatures in the lane. So if you're looking for, some sort of self-activator for those kinds of cards, then this would get it done. If you are looking for, crazy interactions, I actually don't know if it works this way. So I've asked CVH, he's going to check with the design team, but my immediate question was, when I saw this card, I sent CVH a message and I said, hey, does last gasp effects trigger slay? Meaning, if I give Blast Bones a slay effect and the last gasp kills something, does that count as slay? And he said he was going to have to get back with me, because in my mind, I just really want to give this thing a fork and then trade it into something and clear like a lane full of 1/1s to draw 8 cards. 9 cards, 10 cards, 12 cards, whatever it is, like basically overdraw my hand. I just want to do it one time because I think it will be quite funny, but I don't know if it works that way. So I guess stay tuned. Maybe I'll tweet it when he gives me an answer. I'll mention something in my Discord as well. But yeah, other effects like that, so things like fork or lethal or whatever, are going to be needed to carry this card. Now, this card could be insane if it was like a 4-cost 2/1. The fact that it's a 3/1 hurts it, because it means you can't abuse it with Necromancer and keep getting it back for like weird interactions. Like I said, this is okay, but it needs some help, I think, right now to see play. It could still see play depending on what else we see in the set. The last card is Monastery Champion. This is a card that was revealed by Ian Bits, and this is a 5-cost willpower Khajiit. It is a 6/5 body with breakthrough that says pilfer, summon a 3/3 Cathay Rot. So it's just a 3/3 creature. And I really want to like this card, but I think that this card is going to struggle to find a home. So when you're looking at 5-drops, you're going to have some other cards that you immediately compare it to, whether it's fair or not. You're going to compare it to cards like Torval Extortionist. You're going to compare it to cards like Blood Dragon, and you're going to compare it even potentially to cards like Phalanx Exemplar. Why those cards? Glad you asked. I keep wanting to say Monastery Champion. Monastic Champion. Oh gosh, that's going to trip me up. We're just going to start calling it Kitty Champion. Kitty Champion here is essentially a 5-cost card that you're going to play on the board and then pray it survives. Now, the good news is 5 health is still enough that it has a chance to survive, right? It's outside of lightning bolt range. It likely needs to eat some sort of hard removal or a lethal ping. But the reality is you're playing this, praying it survives, and then you've got to successfully attack with it and trigger the pilfer. Now, the breakthrough helps with that, and if you're playing this as a mid-range style card that you're trying to be proactive with, using this to run over some smaller creature so that you maintain your board pressure while also generating a 3/3 body is potentially a pretty big deal. Like, that is a powerful play. But you spent 5 magicka and had no immediate value or impact. And there's a reason that cards like Blood Dragon are fringe playable. They used to be staples, but in today's Legends, it's all about immediate value. And this does not provide immediate value. And then even when you do get value, it's just more bodies. At least something like... So the other card I mentioned was Torval Extortionist. That is a 7/5, does not have the breakthrough, but the value you get from that is that you can potentially play like your entire hand the next turn. It has a huge power spike. A free 3/3 is not really what I would consider to be a huge power spike. And then I also mentioned something like Phalanx Exemplar. So Phalanx Exemplar, also no real immediate board value. However, it at least has guard. So in terms of like this having breakthrough, yeah, that helps the pilfer side. But if you're behind and you're playing a 5-cost do nothing, then you're probably just losing the game. And if you're ahead, then this becomes a win more, which has always been kind of an issue with pilfer. So something like Exemplar, you know, it only attacks for 5, but it still has the 6 health, so still, you know, decently statted creature. But at least you get some potential defensive value out of it, and it's got some additional text on it as well. And so if you're competing for slots against creatures like Blood Dragon, like Exemplar, like Extortionist, I just don't know where this finds a home unless you're running other Pilfer synergy, and specifically there needs to be some stuff coming in the new set that maybe lets you trigger Pilfer in some more interesting ways. Now, we did see the Rimmen siege weapons already, but that also has the same issue in that it has to survive for a turn. So yeah, in theory, if you have siege weapons on the board and then you play this and your opponent doesn't kill your support and your opponent doesn't kill your creature, you should just win anyway. But at that point, you're going to make a 3-3, probably swing for 6 and make another 3-3, and then hope they don't have some sort of board sweeper. So you can set up some powerful plays, don't get me wrong. I think where this shines the most, if I'm being entirely honest, is as a potential game ender with Master of Thieves, because this naturally has Pilfer. You don't have to do anything crazy to give it Pilfer. So if you're looking to maximize value, you play this, and if it does survive for a turn, instead of swinging for 6, you're swinging for 12 and creating 2 3-3s, plus you've played the Master of Thieves. Like, that's the kind of turn that says, answer me or you lose. But again, I don't know. It's one of those cards that I just don't think is gonna find a home unless it gets an awful lot of help in the form of other cards or effects that we have not yet seen from the set. So anyway, those are the 4 cards that have been revealed since my last video thus far. I want to know what you guys think. Are you excited about any of them? Do you think that any of these will see play? Because again, arguably, none of these could see play. I can see fringe case usage for Smuggler, and I can see fringe case usage for Imbued Altmer. Blast Bones I want to love because the effect is really, really cool. When you see the VFX for it, it's pretty sweet, and it has charge on it, so like I want to love it. But if I'm being honest, it needs help, and so does the champion. So does the kitty champion. So anyway, let me know what you think. If you made it this far, I love you. Thanks for watching. Until next time, may you walk on warm sands.